My name is Matt Fromer, and I work for SWEEP. As Chris said, I went to CU when I was in the master's program here, and the last time I was in this room was in December when I graduated. I was sitting in the second row right there with John and Jeremy, who are also here, so that's great. I went back to school for mainly urban planning, ended up taking a class in transportation, which was a requisite, a required class. And I was thinking to myself, well, I guess transportation will be interesting. The professor was Will Torr, who is the former mayor of Boulder, Boulder County Commissioner. And he came in the class, started talking about electric vehicles, shared mobility, Uber and Lyft, autonomous vehicles, and it was just kind of blowing my mind. I was like, this is so cool. And so I ended up kind of shifting gears and going into transportation. And now, this is 2 years later, I work with Will every day, and he's my boss at SWEEP. And so we get to work together on some of these problems. So what do we do at SWEEP? We're the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. So we do building energy efficiency, we do industrial, utility, and transportation. Most of what I do is vehicle electrification. We also do public transit work with public buses, and also multimodal, so biking, walking, active transportation. So originally I was going to come talk about just local policy around EVs, and then I thought, in honor of National Drive Electric Week, why don't we expand the conversation a little bit, talk about EVs in general, where we are, what some of the benefits are of the technology, some of the challenges. So I thought, as part one of the presentation will just be about EVs in general, and I'll stop. I think it's going to be a 3-part presentation. I'll stop after each section, and we can ask some questions, do some Q&A. So to start here, so at a high level, emissions from the transportation sector. So in 2016, America crowned a new pollution king, and it's the transportation sector, surpassed the electricity sector. And you can see the black line there is emissions from the electricity sector, red is transportation sector. Part of this is great advances in the electricity sector. We have energy efficiency measures, things like LEDs that are bringing down demand. We also have more renewables on the grid that are reducing emissions. And then part of it is the transportation sector emissions coming up because we're buying big trucks, SUVs, heavier vehicles with lower fuel efficiency. And we're also driving more because gas prices are relatively low. So how do we address this? We talked about a few technologies. Diego talked about a few promising technologies. We have hydrogen fuel cell, biofuels, CNG, LNG, and electric vehicles. EVs have kind of emerged from the pack as a technology mainly because the price of lithium-ion batteries has come down so dramatically over the last 8 years. So if we look on the left side here, in 2010, the cost of a lithium-ion battery was $1,000 per kilowatt hour. That has come down to about between $150 and $200 today, just 8 years later. And Tesla's saying they can get it to $100 per kilowatt hour at the end of this year. So if we translate that to, say, a Nissan Leaf battery, it's got a 40 kilowatt hour battery. In 2010, just the battery pack would have cost $40,000. And we're saying at the end of this year, it could cost as little as $4,000, which is incredible when you think about the price of the vehicle. Another question I get a lot is, how clean are EVs really, right? We're plugging them into the electricity grid. We still have a lot of coal in the electricity grid. And so this really depends on what your energy mix is. And so the Union of Concerned Scientists has a really cool tool here, the EV emissions tool, where you can input your zip code and your car make and model, and it'll spit out grams of CO2 per mile. And so I did this for Boulder. I did it with a 2018 Nissan Leaf. And it's producing about the same greenhouse gas emissions as a gas vehicle that gets 52 miles per gallon, which is really good. It's about double the fleet average. The beauty of EVs, though, is that they get cleaner with time. As we clean up the electricity grid, we clean up your EV. So you're not locked into, unlike a gas-powered vehicle, you're not locked into miles per gallon today. You're looking at a future clean vehicle. So here's an image of Xcel Energy's Colorado Energy Plan, which was just approved by the PUC, I think a few weeks ago. So Xcel's plan for the next 10 years is to increase the proportion of renewables on the grid from 29% in 2016 to 55% in 2026. And so what does that mean for your EV that you bought today? So if we're comparing an EV today versus a gas-powered vehicle, it's about a 45% reduction in CO2 emissions. In 2026, that'll be 75% reduction. Another question I get is, where are we with EV sales? And so here's a graph of the sales to date, the first 6 months of 2018 by state. So the text is a little bit small, but you can see at the top, if you can't see the text, it says California. And there's no surprise there. They're about 6.5% market share. And I think they just cracked 7% in August. They're hoping to get to 8% by the end of the year. It's accelerating dramatically. Colorado, not too shabby. We're sitting in 5th place if we don't count District of Columbia, which isn't a real state. So we're in 5th place, which is pretty good.
Boulder County and be bigger.
Right, exactly.
Is that per capita or total numbers?
So this is the market share of EVs related to the total vehicle market, right? So 1.73% of all vehicles. So if we're selling 1,000 vehicles, about 17 are EVs, which doesn't sound great, but we're getting there. We're getting up there. 18. Yeah, we'd like to point, so about the national average is about 1.6%. That average is brought up by California. About half of all EVs in the country are sold in California. So they're someone to look to for policy. And if you look at the bullet point at the bottom, somebody already pointed out that City of Boulder and Boulder County have a great EV market share. We're at about 5% here, which is great, but Norway's at 50%. And I see no reason why we can't be there. We already have the interest, we have the technology, so how do we get there, right? Here's another graph. So this is monthly sales over the last 10 years. That's a lot of bars, but the yellow is 2018. And you can see just rapid growth this year versus last year. So the first 8 months of 2017 versus the first 8 months of 2018, we're looking at 57% growth in the EV market. If we just take August 2017 versus August 2018, 120% growth. So 16,000 EVs sold in August 2017, 36,000 sold in August 2018. Why was this? So, yeah, you can't ignore the Tesla Model 3. It's a bit of a game changer. It's a total game changer. So it's the first really affordable, long-range, high-performance electric vehicle. If we look at the graph there, so the blue is total EV sales per month in 2018. The red is just one vehicle, the Tesla Model 3. And I know Tesla gets a lot of attention in the media. We all read about it every day. I think a lot of it is warranted. They've really done a lot to push this market. They've built out their own supercharging network. They made the sexiest, highest performance, safest car ever in 2013. And they should get kudos also for producing a vehicle that's really geared toward the mass market. I mean, they could have sort of stayed in the luxury BMW, Mercedes type market, but now they're trying to gear a new vehicle toward the mass market, and they're doing so now. So they've been ramping up production. Elon Musk calls production hell. Started with maybe a couple hundred vehicles a week in the beginning of 2018, and by end of June, they're about 5,000 vehicles a week, which is one Tesla Model 3 in the factory every 2 minutes. It's amazing to think about. And we're looking at about 6,000 a week now, and by the end of this year, about 8,000. So you can expect the monthly numbers to go up into the 30s. But Tesla isn't the only EV. There are 41 others, and these are just some of them. These are some of the top 10 highest selling EVs of 2018. And just to clarify, when I talk about EVs, I'm talking about any car with a plug. Some of these are called battery electric vehicles, so all battery, all electric. They tend to have a range of 200 or 300 miles per charge. Some of these are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, like the Toyota Prius Prime there on the left. And these have about, I think it's 50 miles. I don't know if anyone owns one here. 50 miles of electric charge, and then it switches over to a gasoline engine. So you can, basically your day-to-day, the average American drives 30 miles a day. Your day-to-day would be all an electric engine, and then your road trips would be gas-powered. I'd also like to point out that we're seeing a shift from like a traditional EV, which is compact car, sedan, the Nissan Leaf, the Chevy Bolt, two larger vehicles, the crossover, the SUV, which is also where the American car market is going. And so the Mitsubishi Outlander is a plug-in hybrid electric that was introduced this year, and also the Hyundai Kona is a crossover. We're also looking at the Subaru Crosstrek EV to come in the beginning of 2019. So if we look on a global scale, in Q3 of 2018, we're about to sell our 4 millionth EV globally. Super cool. It's a lot of cars. However, when you think about the grand scheme of cars, it's sort of a drop in the bucket. You can see it. You could see it ramping up there. You could see China really pushing it from below. That's in the red there. When we think about the global scale, I think Elon Musk put this best in a podcast with Joe Rogan last week when he said, "The momentum towards sustainable energy is too slow. There are still 2.5 billion trucks and cars in the world. New cars and trucks equal about 100 million new vehicles per year. So even if you could snap your fingers and turn all cars and trucks electric, it'd still take 25 years to change the transport base to electric." So the challenge is massive, of course. And so what we need to do basically is use all the tools at our disposal, all the policies, programs, actions to really increase that adoption rate. So I'm going to start to talk a little bit about policy here. Are there any questions about EVs before I go on?
One thing that keeps going through my mind is, we're worried about changing our light bulbs and reducing our power consumption. And don't get me wrong, I got 2 EVs, and I'm thinking about all the electricity that's going to take to be generated to power all these EVs. It's probably a good thing it's going to take 25 years, because when you think about it, if everybody was driving an EV today, where would all the power come from? Has anybody done any calculations about that, and what it's going to take in terms of, PV farms and wind farms and everything else that it's going to take to power all these cars?
So there's a lot of research around that exact topic. I would say, we designed the grid before a lot of the energy efficiency technologies came on board. So we designed it with extra capacity. There's like hundreds of extra megawatts on the grid right now. There's also a potential with EVs to soak up some of that off-peak generation. So if we design the system for peak load, say, 1 p.m. in the summer on the hottest day of the year, that's our max capacity, but none of that is churning in the middle of the night, right? So if we can shift some of that load through electricity rates to the nighttime and soak up some of that wind at night that we already have, I think we have plenty of capacity at present for EVs, yeah. And then you start to introduce things like storage at the home level, rooftop PV. Yeah, there's plenty of opportunities there. So I think it's gonna be a while before we really need new generation to meet the EV load.
But what you're talking about between the different is not between different houses, it's just between the car and the house.
Which thing?
The storage, the utilization of the night storage.
Yes.
It's not between houses.
It's not between houses. When I talk about the night load, I'm talking about the generation at night. So we have all this excess wind, excess natural gas, excess coal, and no one is running their air conditioners or lights in the middle of the night. So if you say offer an EV owner 50% off your electricity rate to charge your car in the middle of the night, studies have shown that changes behavior. People charge at night, and we actually have the capacity to serve that.
Yeah.
Xcel Energy has that type of program called peak demand time, and you shift your use to those off times, off peaks.
Right. It's called time of use. Yeah.
How many cars can do a ticket though right now? How many cars are made they can do that right now? Of the electrics.
You can schedule charging.
That the grid can talk to your car and say, okay, I'm the grid, I got extra power. Can you take it?
Right. So it's actually a device in the charger itself. They're called networked smart chargers. So Tesla, for example, you can say, if it's a cheaper electricity rate starting at midnight, I want to start charging at midnight. You can set that schedule.
United Power does the same. We live in Broomfield, and so we installed a Schneider charging station in the garage, and then I had United Power come out and install a peak meter, and then I set the car to to charge overnight. And I've been doing that for 5 years, and it's wonderful. And people ask, how much is it added to your electric bill? Almost nothing, because the night cost is so low.
Right, cool. Yeah. So, thanks for sharing. One in the back?
Yeah, I just want to mention that Tri-State Generation has put a special breaker in my house so they can shut off my EV if the peak demand gets too high.
Cool. One in the back here.
I didn't get a chance to look at it carefully. I saw an article today, I think it was in Southern California. Edison has a method to tell the car, back to his point, to tell the car delay charging for up to an hour or 4 hours or something like that. I just scanned the article, but look for that.
Sure.
I saw that today.
Those are really cool pilot programs you can opt into. Yeah. One here.
I was gonna, I saw a graphic of future trends, and it said, like, you know, by 2030 we're looking at massive adoption of fully autonomous electric cars. So, you know, the conversation needs to go today, even today, I think, with more car sharing. I mean, because the whole idea of one car per person is not sustainable, whether electric or not. So, you know, today we have Turo, for example. You can put your electric car in Turo and rent it to somebody who's coming into town, things like that. So I think.
Cool. I'm gonna circle back to that later. Yeah, thank you. One more
I
here.
got Tara Ferguson in the new MEMB core board, so they
Oh,
can
cool.
go back and talk to some of us. You've got some energy folks here too. That EV emissions tool that you showed up there, is there a way to play with that if you buy like the blocks from Excel for the wind generated energy to see what your carbon emissions are if you bought the blocks?
With the wind source program?
Yeah.
I don't think so as of yet. Yeah, it's pretty general tool, but that's a really good idea. Yeah, to make it a little more granular. Yeah.
On the AFDC website anyway.
Okay, good. I got that. Okay, good.
Okay, so we're going to move into policy here. And I'm going to do a similar thing where we start really broad, talk about national policy, zoom into state, and then local level. So first, this is a list of countries that are banning the sale of fossil fuel vehicles and have set a date to do so. So we have several in Europe, the UK, France, Germany, Ireland, Netherlands, and then we have the heavy hitters, China and India. India's banning the sale of fossil fuel vehicles by 2030, which is big time. We also have California, who is considering a similar policy, has been talking about it, and they've thrown out the year 2040. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this before the end of the year. They seem to be passing a new energy policy every day, so this could be one of them. And I mean, California, just to give them some kudos, I mean, not just in the US, but when any of these countries look at EV policy, they look at California first, because California's throwing so much money at the problem, like billions of dollars of clever minds and politicians thinking about this and think of strategies. And so, you know, when China goes to look at their own zero emission vehicle program, they look to California. So we're lucky to have them, I guess. Yeah.
What was 2018? China's 2018?
So that's for the 533 specific models. So they banned 500 like diesel. Yeah. Yeah. Wouldn't be surprised. Okay. Okay. So one thing, you know, these are all pretty abstract goals, right? You know, some number by some date in the future, sometime. How do they really affect us in industry? And so automakers have really responded to those sort of announcements. Literally, these are like the top 10 global automakers. They've all responded with, okay, we're going to introduce dozens of new EVs to market by 2025, really, the next 7-8 years. And I counted, I think, 130 new EV models in the next 7 years. Currently, we have about 40, so like tripling the size of the market. It's amazing. Particularly Ford announced that they were going to introduce 40 new EVs by 2022, which is about 3.5 years away. And they have 3 right now. So they are pouring billions into that program. It would be amazing to see how they get there. I also want to point out Volvo, 50% of sales are electric by 2025. So some are these sort of larger goals, percentages. We're seeing a lot of activity from the auto manufacturing sector. So those are all electric, as opposed to plug-in hybrid electric that has both the electric and the gas motor. So U.S. climate policy and governance. This is a really simple slide I made, and no surprise to anyone here. In 2016, good old days, we had the Obama EPA, we had the Paris Climate Agreement, we had the Clean Power Plan, we had revamped Clean Car Standards. 2 years later, most of those are gone, or being challenged at least. So we're seeing a huge shift, in my mind, from climate policy at the federal level to the state and local level, which really is a huge opportunity, right? Especially for states and local governments to try certain things that you can't really try at the federal level. It's sort of be a laboratory and experiment with different policies. And so this is sort of the impetus for a lot of activity that's going on right now at the state and local level. Whoa, Hickenlooper taking over. Okay, that's our governor, John Hickenlooper, posing in a Tesla Model X. He announced the state goal in Colorado of 940,000 EVs on our roads by 2030. It's a pretty bold goal there. And so at the state level, how do we get there? What are our favorite policies in the toolkit? Number one is vehicle purchasing incentives, such as the state EV tax credit. Number two is EV charging infrastructure. I'll go into the Volkswagen settlement and utility investment. And number three, they really don't want us to have it, adopting California Clean Car Standards, which I guess you guys are working on now.
Say so about where Volkswagen spends their penalty money?
Right, we're gonna get there, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can you mention real quick, isn't there 6 or 7 states that are following the California rules real closely? And then Colorado's trying to join that group, right?
Right.
Are they just doing exactly what California's doing, or as close as they can?
I have a whole slide on it. Cool.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So to start with, the first one, vehicle purchasing incentives. I like this graphic a lot. It was actually created by another student in the MENV program, Andy Keaton, who you guys know. So these are monthly EV sales in the state of Georgia in 2015. In August of 2015, their state tax credit expired. And sales dropped from 3.68% market share in June to 0.29% market share in August, more than 90% drop. So if you're wondering about the impact of these kind of vehicle purchasing incentives, this graph speaks volumes. In Colorado, we actually have the highest EV tax credit in the nation right now at $5,000. And we've been really clever about it. It's refundable. So it doesn't matter what your tax appetite is, you're getting that $5,000. It's also assignable, so it's basically an instant rebate at the time of purchase if the dealership chooses to sign up for that program, which Nissan has. So we've been really clever about that. Do you have a question?
Plus Excel's $3,000 rebate for new Nissan leases.
Right, the EV discount program? Yeah.
Does anybody know whether that's being renewed for 2019?
Couldn't tell you.
From what I understand, it's between Nissan and Excel, and they keep kind of extending it kind of month to month or quarter to quarter, and I guess they just kind of have continually been doing that because.
Right, so that was a 6-month program, I think from April to September this year, and they did the same thing last year. Last year was a $10,000 discount. Yeah, they were trying to clear it.
1 month only.
Okay, and then
It was only through June.
and so Excel didn't put up the money, Nissan did, but it looked like Excel did because they did the marketing. So very clever from Excel Energy. This year it was a $3,000 discount for the new Nissan Leaf.
You said it was very clever, it was fundable and assignable, but could you explain how that's different from other states? Because that's really important.
Sure, absolutely. So, refundable versus non-refundable tax credit. The federal EV tax credit, for example, is non-refundable. So you're only eligible for the $7,500 tax credit up to your tax liability. So I think the number is if you're, say, a solo, a no dependent, you have to make at least $68,000 a year to have enough tax appetite to access the $7,500 rebate. If you're making less than that, it goes down proportionally. With the state EV tax credit, we're saying it's $5,000 no matter what your income is, right? So that's really important. Assignability is also really cool. So it basically allows dealerships to transfer the point of the rebate from your tax filing deadline in April to the point of sale. So if I bought an EV today, I'd have to wait, in other states where it's not assignable, I'd have to wait until next April to get that $5,000 back. In Colorado, and Nissan's so far the only dealership or the only OEM that's signed up for this, I can get that $5,000 at the point of sale. Yeah.
If you're getting a Tesla, wasn't there something where they were going to sell over 200,000 vehicles and therefore not eligible? Do you know the state of that?
Right. So yeah, they've crossed it. So it actually phases out over time. So it's still $7,500 until January 1st, 2019, and then it cuts in half to $3,750 for another 2 quarters, so 6 months, and then I don't know if it's a half again or it phases out completely, but you're right, it's the first 200,000 vehicles sold, yeah. And I think they're the only one who's crossed the threshold. I think Chevy's close, and Nissan has about another 18 months to go. So yeah, get them while they're hot, yeah.
So perhaps this is a dense question, but is there a single reason why that dropped and nothing has happened since?
Right, so I think they realized that this program was more popular than they thought it was going to be, and it was using up a lot of funding, a lot of sustainability program funding, and so they had to take away the tax credit. They are reconsidering it now, talking about reintroducing it in 2019. I think they're redesigning it so that it's more geared toward low and middle income communities. So say putting a cap on the retail price of the vehicle. It doesn't really make sense for a Tesla. If a guy's buying a Tesla for $150,000, he doesn't necessarily need the $2,500 rebate versus someone who's buying a Nissan Leaf, right? So it's sort of redesigning it that way, yeah.
Are these stimulations on the part of these different manufacturers tracking the type of solar that's backing up this whole system in terms of large-scale solar or non-transmission rooftop solar and the benefits thereof on the, between?
I don't think the auto manufacturers are considering the solar power to the cars. They're just focused on the car industry. Does that get at your question at all? Yeah.
If you've got stimulus is happening, then you're affecting that market, and you're losing money in the system by coal, so it would seem that they would track each other.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a topic in the utility sector. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, but yeah. We good to move forward for now? Yeah. Okay, this map, Diego stole my thunder with this one. This is already shown, but this is EV charging infrastructure. We'll talk a little bit about the Volkswagen settlement. So there was the emissions cheating scandal from a few years ago. Volkswagen now owes the American people $2 billion. And that's being distributed based on how much the cheating emission scandal impacted your state. So California got most of it. Colorado gets $68.7 million over the next 10 years. And that money, so 15% of that money is going toward light-duty vehicle charging infrastructure. So these are charging stations, and we're starting with the DC fast charging stations along our highway corridors, and that's what the map is on the bottom there. The rest of the money can be used to replace vehicles that aren't that efficient, like mainly trucks and buses. And some of those can be replaced with electric buses, electric school buses, electric public transit buses, and we're talking about up to $400,000 per vehicle, which is pretty substantial. So we're excited about that. And the first round of that funding is opening up in October.
So is the charging infrastructure that's going to be put in along the corridors, is that something that's going to be partnered with somebody like an EVgo or somebody like that?
Exactly, right. So each one of these corridors, there's 6 of them. And the RFA process, there's bids on each corridor. So EVgo could be one, charge point could be another, green lot, so forth. And the deal is basically you have to take a whole corridor. So say the yellow one there is Boulder, Estes Park, Granby, Steamboat, Craig, Dinosaur, so 6 stations. And the idea is, I don't know who's charging their car in Dinosaur. They don't really have a huge EV base there, whereas in Boulder we do. So we know that return on investment is pretty secure in Boulder maybe not so much in Dinosaur. So by having one developer take the whole corridor, it ensures that we spread the network across the whole state.
It probably also means you have to be a member of 4 different charging organizations.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, you're right. Part of the standards that the Colorado Energy Office is working on is we're setting one standard where you don't have to have different card for each, a different account for each, so it's just one account, right, for these public charging stations. Yeah, which is.
Who doesn't have 4 cards?
This is a map of public charging stations in Colorado today, and this is through a website called PlugShare. There's 732 in the state of Colorado, and the yellow is DC fast charging stations. The green is level 2 charging stations. So those are slower charge, about 8 to 10 hours, whereas the DC fast charging stations are 45 minutes or less. So, I mean, you're really never that far from a charging station unless you're on some forest road somewhere. But we really are adding chargers every day. I think 70 of the 730 chargers are within 5 miles of the city of Boulder. So we really live in the EV mecca here. You can charge your car. We're going to see this map populate over the next couple of years quite a bit. Okay, so on to the third policy here. How am I doing on time? Okay, good. So adopting the Clean Car Standards. So this is a really hot topic in Colorado right now. In June, Governor Hickenlooper ordered the proposed rulemaking on adopting California's Clean Car Standards, and that was really in response to the Trump administration rolling back the federal Clean Car Standards. And so what's going on now is the rulemaking process. It's in the Air Quality Control Commission. And what they decided to do, and this was in the August meeting about a month ago, is to split the 2 parts of Clean Car Standards, so LEV and ZEV as they're known. I just want to define each of these. It's a pretty complicated policy, unfortunately, and so there's a lot of misinformation out there about it. There's a lot of politicians on the Western Slope claiming this is going to hurt Colorado farmers. We're taking away their tractors. It has nothing to do with that, literally nothing to do with it. So to start, the first piece of it is a low emission vehicle or LEV standards. And these are vehicle efficiency standards or mile per gallon for all cars, gas powered cars, all cars. And they ratchet it up every year. So, and we're ratcheting it up to about 40 miles per gallon, real world EPA window sticker, by 2025. And so the Obama administration negotiated with California in 2010 and set one national program standard, which was a big deal. The car makers love this. Oh, we have one car market. We don't have to build one car for California, one for Nevada. So Obama really united the program under one national program. Since then, the Trump administration has sort of revoked that and is rolling back the federal Clean Car Standards and also challenging California's right to set their own standards. So 13 states have chosen to adopt the LEV standard, and Colorado is now choosing to join that. Still in proposed rulemaking, and the AQCC will vote on it in November, but it's looking good. The other piece to this is the zero emission vehicle or ZEV standards. And that's a requirement for automakers to sell a certain number of EVs in the state each year. And that gets ratcheted up every year. And we're looking at about 10% market share by 2025. And so AQCC decided to kind of separate the two. LEV we're deciding on in November. Then we're going to open ZEV in December and decide in March.
A quick question on the definition of cars. Does that include SUVs, which are basically light trucks?
So it includes, all passenger cars, crossovers, SUVs, minivans, pickup trucks, or passenger cars, right?
What about motorcycles?
Motorcycles, I don't think so. Good question. Is it exempt? Yeah.
I think.
But I saw an electric BMW motorcycle today.
What?
I saw an electric BMW motorcycle today.
I saw a driverless one.
Really?
I drove my zero electric motorcycle here today.
Nice. Okay, so test drives after this event. You want to hear?
The low emission vehicles, is that an average per automaker, or is that every single vehicle has to meet 40 LPG?
Oh, it's a fleet-wide average. So, the Ford F-150 will still be at 25, yeah. Yeah. You want here?
Well, I was just gonna say, so you're gonna have kind of the, hopefully all these automakers don't do what they've been doing where they just have like 1 or 2 EVs that get like 50 miles on a charge to bring their average down. Well, it seems like they're serious about it based on everything they've announced in previous slides, but.
Right. That's a good point. I mean, yeah. We have one here?
Yeah, I was wondering with the zero emission vehicle, since most of the battery vehicles are cars at the moment, and all the automakers make these claims that no one buys cars anymore, they just buy crossovers. Is the sales requirement a sales requirement to consumers, or are we going to end up with these car manufacturers making car EVs and then unloading them on rental fleets in order to meet their numbers?
Yeah, what you're describing is like called compliance vehicles, which we're seeing in California, right? That's not the direction we're seeing because it's not really, they're not just trying to meet the requirement anymore. They recognize that countries like China and India are trying to go 100% electric. So they're actually accepting this future of we're going to need electric everything, right? We're going to need. So we have, the Chrysler Pacifica as a plug-in hybrid. It's a minivan. We have I think 22 new SUV like electric models coming in the next few years. So yeah, if you're looking for an electric SUV, 2019, 2020 could be your year. Yeah, sure.
Just a quick point to mention how strong China and their mandates are driving the globe. Because Ford's an international, a global company, and they went from 3.5 billion dedicated to EVs to like 11.5 billion, largely because they're going to be able to sell a big bulk of those to China. So
sure, yeah. Yeah, also the Chinese market, there's something like 400 new automakers in China, and they're starting to build factories in Europe. So my list of the top 10 global automakers before is likely to have 5 of those could be Chinese companies in the next 10 years.
There's not much to an EV car.
It's easier to build, actually,
yeah.
the battery.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, this is a photo I took at the Air Quality Control Commission about a month ago. So this was the proposed rulemaking where they split the LEV and the ZEV standards. Usually these meetings last for about 1 hour, have a few people make public comment, and everybody goes home. This one had like 100 people, and 60 people provided public comment. This was at one point the commissioner asked, how many people were here to speak on zero emission vehicle standards? And like everybody raised their hand. It was awesome. So I was never much of like an activist myself and really engaged in these kind of things, but after being at one, it was very clear after 6 hours of public comment that the commissioners were swayed by a lot of these comments, and that it is important to add your voice and to be there. So I just added a couple dates on the bottom there. So the AQCC is deciding on LEV November 15th, and then ZEV next March.
Were most of the comments for?
57 of 60 were for, and then 3 were against, and they were all like auto industry attorneys. And someone pointed out that they were the same 3 that voted against like airbags and seatbelts. It's like they're voting against any regulation.
Dinosaurs.
Yeah. So hired guns, I guess. Okay, I'm going to move on to local EV policy, unless anybody has any questions about state policy for now. Okay.
One question.
One, sure.
So that's a rule proposed by the governor. You get a new governor, they can undo the rule. So wouldn't it be better to have it through legislation?
Yeah. But we don't really want to bet on that since we're so far.
Sure.
We're really close to it, and it is a process to undo once you've done it. And I think we're feeling good about the upcoming election. So,
Well, that lasts for 4 years, right?
Right. But it does say a lot for like ZEV standards for automakers, bringing their marketing dollars, bringing their EV inventory to the state of Colorado. And that can happen in 4 years. That'll happen pretty quickly. So even 4 years would be helpful, yeah. Sure.
Well, I was just going to add, so it's kind of what's happening at the federal level with all the
stuff they're trying to take away from the EPA, like we're doing Clean Air Act and all that kind of stuff. But what you run into is when you're one of these federal or state or bureaus, you have to like really build a case for why you're implementing it. And in order to take it away, you have to build just as strong of a case for like why it shouldn't be in effect. Like you have to explain like how it's harming businesses and how it's harming people and the economy. And if they build it really well, like they probably will, no one's gonna be able to undo it because they can't prove that it harmed anyone to implement it in the first place. And that's why the EPA is not able to do a lot of the changes they want to do. And it's going to courts, and courts are saying, nope, you have to follow through with it for now, at least until you prove to us that it's harming people. And so it is not as good as obviously having people voted, in the legislature, but I think the legislature is still split right now, so that's probably why it can't go through the legislature. So this is another way of trying to do it.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Sure.
One piece at state legislature, I was reading an article on ZEV Standards, and they were talking about like one car that I own a Nissan Leaf right now. One car that I'm excited about is the Subaru Crosstrek that's supposed to be coming out. Well, what I was reading is that that's not going to be available in Colorado because we're not part of ZEV. So it's one of those where I think so many people in Colorado we want a Subaru to get to the mountains for all-wheel drive, but that car's not going to be available to us when it comes out. So I've read, is it correct that it would be important for us to be in that program so that we have more availability
for that car alone? Yeah, I know. It's like our state car, the Subaru. You're totally right. I think that argument is convincing enough, right? That Subaru comes out and says we're only introducing this in ZEV states, and Colorado's a huge Subaru state. So
make sure to get your comments in.
Yes, please do. Yeah.
Yeah, go on the Colorado Health Department site and add comments for that November meeting. That's really important.
Sure. We also got Auden Chandler on the AQCC, who's the newest commissioner. If you know that, he works for Aspen Institute, a big environmental guy. So it was a big win for us, yeah. Okay, so now to get to the local level. I saw you're wearing the shirt here, ready for 100? Yeah. Get the swag. Okay. So SWEEP, Conservation Colorado, Sierra Club, Coperg, and CLEAR. These are 5 organizations that are getting together. And we're inspired by the Ready for 100 campaign, which is a commitment from cities and counties to go to 100% renewable energy and set a target date for that. We want to do the same thing for electric vehicles. And so we're kind of inspired by that campaign, following in their footsteps. Ready for 100, there's 10 of these cities and counties are in Colorado, including Boulder. We also have Denver, Pueblo, Nederland, Longmont, Lafayette, Breckenridge, Aspen, Pueblo County, and Summit County. And the idea here is that these local commitments shape public understanding and drive broad change. So really hard to conceptualize climate issues at the federal level, United Nations level. See, how do we more personalize this in your community? And that's really what these campaigns look to do. The process. So this Go EV City campaign is what we came up with. So the first step is the city council, a resolution to make a commitment to go electric. We have a city plan in place within 18 months of adoption. The city designates appropriate staff time and resources, and that's really important. If anyone works for the city and county here, that's a big challenge with implementation. And the city participates in a consortium to share lessons and best practices, and the city shares key tracking data. So these are our big 4 goals with Go EV City. Number 1, electrify the municipal fleet, so the city fleet. Number 2, electrify public transit buses. Number 3, electrify taxis, Uber, and Lyft. And number 4, electrify all vehicles in the community. This is what we put together. So this is the toolkit for Go EV City. So it's a toolkit of 40 different policies that your community can adopt. We're not saying you have to adopt all of them. It would be different in different communities, depending on how big you are, what you already have. But this is just what other communities in Colorado, but also in other states have done to accelerate the transition to EVs. So when we think about policy making, we kind of start from a place of problem solving. So we start with a problem or a barrier to EV adoption, and then we look at solutions. So these are the top 5. High price point of EVs, EV model availability, charging infrastructure, dealership preparation, and public awareness. And so the policy toolkit is split up into 7 different categories. And there's 40 different tools. I'm not going to go through each one of them here. I try to pull out like my greatest hits. So we're going to go through a couple of those. So the first step is Go EV City resolution. So the city council to announce, we want to do this. We want to go to 100% electric vehicles. And then you have 18 months to draft an EV strategy, also known as an EV action plan or readiness plan. So Aspen's done this in 2016. They're kind of ahead of the game here. So we learned a lot from what that community has done. And the strategy sets targets for EV adoption for 2025, 2030, and 2050. I just want to point out, so Denver just announced, about a month ago, Mayor Hancock announced the 80 by 50 climate action plan. So 50% of all vehicles in Denver to be EVs by 2025, 30 by 2030, and 100% of cars, buses, and taxis will be EV by 2050. This is not just market share. So remember the numbers I was talking about before, the 1.73, that is EV market share, percentage of new vehicles sold. This is 15% of all cars. So your market share has to be like double that. So we're really moving here, really cooking. Number 2 is EV perks and incentives, and I mentioned the tax credits. You could also do that at the local level. One here, and this was mentioned in kind of the Xcel Energy program, which kind of grew out of EV and electric bike group buy programs. So group buy programs are where a local government goes to the dealerships in the neighborhood and negotiates discounts for a limited time, maybe 2 or 3 months, and the local government does the marketing for the discount. Boulder County sort of pioneered this in 2016. I don't know if anybody bought a Nissan Leaf in 2016. Yeah. There was, I think, an $8,000 or $9,000 discount, and I think they quintupled the number of sales okay. Okay. Other perks, we have discounted parking rates and carpool lane access for EVs. These are kind of little things, but they really do drive change. You know, if you're sitting in traffic on US 36 and like EVs are racing by you in the carpool lane with just one person there, and you're thinking, oh man, maybe I'll get one. So stuff like that.
I've never heard about the e-bike group buy. Can you say a few words about it?
Sure. So Boulder County organized that last summer and ran it again this summer. I think it just ended at the end of August. And so they worked with a few bike shops in Boulder. It was between $1,000 and $2,500 discount on an electric assist bicycle. But yeah, if you've ever been biking next to someone and they're pedaling slower than you and going twice as fast, that's an electric assist bicycle. You don't have weak legs.
Or not pedaling at all.
Yeah, exactly. This is a group buy program that's going on right now until October 31st on the western slope. It's at Glenwood Springs, and they have one dealership, the Nissan Leaf discount at a Grand Junction Nissan. And I think it's been a $1,000 and $2,000 discount off of each one of these cars, but it's promoted through Garfield County, Pitkin County, Eagle County. They have Town of Vale, Avon, so really getting the word out about EVs, and they've timed it up with National Drive Electric Week. So yeah, just kind of a combination and addressing multiple number of those barriers. So the price, public awareness, dealership preparation, kind of all at once. Electrify the municipal fleet. So cities can really lead by example here and electrify their own fleets. Boulder County can do this. Currently, the majority of the fleet is SUVs and pickup trucks. These are the maintenance cars we see driving around, but they do have the parking cops driving around in compact cars. Those could be a Nissan Leaf, that could be a Chevy Bolt. So setting targets for this and sort of turning over the fleet. This is a photo of a Denver police car that I took this morning. I took this photo this morning. So it's also a Tesla Model S. And before you get all upset that the government's spending our tax money on Teslas, that was a repoed vehicle. I think it belonged to, yeah. Yeah. I think it belonged to a drug dealer before this. Repo man. And so it's really the only Tesla in the Denver police force. But I have heard in Belgium, I think, the Brussels police force is turning their entire fleet over to Model 3s. So they purchased a couple hundred Model 3s, which is really awesome. And no.
The electric zero motorcycle.
Sorry, who's that in the back? Sorry?
The zero electric motorcycle, they had that there too.
They did, yeah, just next to it, out of view, yeah.
Are some of these cars a lot faster than others?
Yes. I would test drive Tesla.
Their aerodynamic design?
Because the torque is instant, so you don't hit the gas pedal and have to wait for the engine to turn. It's just instant. So.
It's not a gas pedal. It's not a gas
Gas pedal. Yeah, I mean the Tesla Model S, I think, was it 0 to 60 in 2 seconds? Does anyone have?
Mode is 2.9 seconds.
2.9.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
It's the weight of the car and the aerodynamic design.
Yes. Yes. It's basically a spaceship. Yes.
That's an enormous reality check for people. You wouldn't believe the number of people who think that electric vehicles are underpowered and they're kind of weenie cars. Man, the first time I put the pedal down in my Leaf, when you don't have it set on Eco or you don't have it set on V, man, it takes.
Got some zip.
The lady in the Mustang challenged my wife. My wife has a Model S.
Sure.
And then the next night, the lady said, "What do you have in that car?" And I rolled down the window and I said, "Oh, it's just like a motor like a golf cart." She looked at me like,
Yeah. Yeah. There was the Formula One race up Pikes Peak this summer. I don't know if you guys saw that an electric vehicle won. So it was faster than all the Formula One cars. And they're not allowed to race like in the Daytona because they are faster. Yeah.
It just seems like the police fleets should be the first ones to be because they have to chase everything.
Right, for the car chase. Yes. As long as it's under 300 miles, we're good. Okay, so this is only a few slides left, but this is a really exciting one. So electrifying public transportation. Electric buses, if you haven't heard of this, they are huge. It's a huge thing. And we're likely to transfer the entire bus fleet to electric before we do with passenger vehicles. They've exploded. There are about 400,000 electric buses in the world right now. 99% of those are in China. But we have Proterra, we have BYD, and they're building buses and signing contracts with U.S. transit agencies every day. So this is happening really quickly. We have a question here?
Do you know, I thought I read something that essentially electric buses have they're the best ROI for electric vehicles in general, just because
Yes.
they put so many miles on them and they spend so much time idling that they cost more up front, but they put so many miles on them that they pay for themselves.
Right. Yeah, it's a really good point to make. Yeah. So because electric vehicles have lower fuel and maintenance costs, the further you drive the vehicle every day, the better investment it is. You're saving more money every day. So high usage vehicles like an electric bus are great. They make a great economic case.
Uber Lyft drivers too.
Exactly. Yeah. Sure.
And smaller buses.
What were those manufacturers again?
Proterra and BYD are the big two right now.
BYD is Warren Buffett right now.
Yeah. And they're in. Yes. Yes. Proterra ain't too shabby either. They have most of the market share in North America, but yeah. Yeah. The guy who started, or not started Proterra, but is the current CEO, was at Tesla. He was like employee number 150. And so it took some of the battery technology with him to Proterra, and I was able to build a business there.
What is Proterra?
Proterra is this battery electric bus up there. That's a public transit bus. So a few others here, electric taxis like Uber and Lyft, like you just mentioned. So what can cities do about Uber and Lyft? And they're private companies, right? They can partner with them on pilot programs, and they're doing this in Portland. They're doing this in California. Uber and Lyft want to go electric. They want to go 100% renewable. They've announced goals to do so. And they have incentive programs for drivers to drive EVs because they are cheaper. If you're driving, 40 hours a week, you're driving at 80,000 miles on your vehicle every year, significant savings if you have an EV.
I got a good policy idea that Lyft and Uber drivers should be allowed to take a transfer pass from the RTD of whatever city and give a discount to the user. At the end of the month, the Uber and Lyft driver has dozens of things that he turns in to the local government or to RTD for a rebate. And you'll get the passenger mileage to soar. If everybody that steps out of a bus says, he's got a Lyft or an Uber on the corner.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. No, I think that is a good solution, especially because Uber has just bought an electric bike company and because they're about to buy an electric scooter company. Because those are our ideal sort of first last mile solutions because they reduce congestion to get people out of cars and onto scooters and onto bikes, right? So yeah, it's a good point though, tying them into the policy, right? Electric school buses are taking off. Electric autonomous vehicles, and this is sort of pipe dream, but it's coming quickly. If we can get ahead of it, maybe a mandate, all autonomous vehicles have to be electric. Sounds good to me. Electric car share programs, like this gentleman mentioned, and we also have another one, EGO, that's in Boulder and Denver. They have a few electric vehicles, but good case there for EVs. They're shared. And particularly the car share platform in general, you could speak to this. Most cars that we own sit in our garages or parked for 95% of the time. So it's a hugely inefficient purchase, right? So car sharing in general is a great idea.
But where are the autonomous vehicles going to be parked to be plugged in for their EV at night when people aren't?
Right. So there have been concepts of like charging hubs that are kind of outside the city. So we can get rid of a lot of parking downtown where it's expensive, where we want more walkable space, more commercial, residential, retail. So moving the parking out of the city center, perhaps underground.
They just put a whole bunch of charging stations in Boulder Depot.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because that's a lot of expensive underground parking.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah. But I think
Central, relatively central.
Right. I think we'll start to see that sort of move out of the city center for sure. And then lastly, I just want to touch on electric micromobility. And what I mean by micromobility is this stuff. Lest we think we invented something brand new, this has been around for over 100 years. And so, 1916. Yes. And so this has been the real transportation disruptor of 2018, particularly in San Francisco, Santa Monica. Bird came in, Lime came in, dropped thousands of electric scooters all over the place without working with the city at all. And within the first week, some of them were in the river, some of them were in the bushes. So a lot of them are parked in car park spaces.
They call it dockless.
Right. So they're
people are leaving them in the middle of sidewalks.
Right. So if you haven't ridden one yet, they're dockless scooters. So they come up on your phone, the location comes up and you find them with your GPS. And then you walk up, you turn on your camera and you unlock them with a barcode. And then you ride it, and it's, I think, $1 to unlock and then 15 cents a minute. So a 2-mile trip is like $3. It's insanely affordable. If you haven't tried it, I'd highly recommend it. I wish we had these in Boulder, but they've certainly targeted bigger markets to start with. And so, what can cities do? They can embrace these kind of technologies. They can set sort of new standards for how they engage with disruptors. I think they're kind of burned by Uber and Lyft that set up this really very confrontational relationship. And so we really need to sort of change how that works, because really, if we think about city goals of reducing car congestion, of reducing emissions, this is our solution, right? I mean, this is one of the great ones. And as are electric bikes and more shared devices. And what's that? Right. Yeah, you'd have to find a couple if you're with a friend, and yeah.
In Malaysia, you put a whole family on one of those.
So number 5, just want to talk about EV charging access and infrastructure. What can cities do? They can build out public charging stations. They can introduce incentives for business owners, for multifamily property owners to build their own charging stations. And then a big one we're working on is EV-ready building codes. So it's like a quarter of the price to install a charging station at the time of new construction versus a retrofit. A retrofit, you have to get a jackhammer, chop up all the asphalt, run the conduit. It's really expensive. So how do we, and it's not necessarily installing charging stations, but at least the pre-wiring and the panel capacity for it. And Boulder's been kind of a leader in this. We have a building code in this city. So for parking lots with over 25 spaces, 10% of those have to have a 240 volt outlet, so you can plug in your car, like a NEMA 1450 plug.
Is this for new construction only?
It's for new construction. I believe also for renovations, over 50% of the lot is changed. And we're also looking to revamp this in the next code cycle, which is next year. But if you look at like Palo Alto, they're at 100% pre-wiring. So every space, they're really going for it. So.
Question.
Sure.
One of the speakers a year or so ago was mentioning one issue with that was at the airport. That you drive to the airport, you plug in, and you really only need charging for 3 hours while you're gone, not the whole 2 weeks you're gone. Has there been anything more that can help alleviate that so that the 10 or 20 or whatever spaces there are aren't sitting basically unused but unable to be used for most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty specific use case, and I would argue as a better application would be for a DC fast charging station, where maybe you park your car at the airport in a normal spot, and when you get back, charge it before you drive home. Because you're right, it's kind of irresponsible. It's as if you pulled into a gas station, parked in front of the hose, and just left it for a few days. People would freak out. So yeah, it's a good concern. Sure.
There's a place right outside the airport called Cathy Parking.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, where you just, they'll charge your car just before you get back.
And they give deep discounts for EVs.
Cool, okay.
And it's a valet process, so while you're gone, the valet charges the vehicle and then charges another
Why are
one.
you wasting the whole car sitting there for 2 weeks while you're gone in the first place?
Right.
That's where you can have the other uses for the friggin' car.
Sure.
That's like stunning.
Some question here?
Well, no, I was just gonna add, because I tried to charge at the airport recently. I rolled up with 10 miles left on my charging. Because I'm like, we're in Denver, there's gotta be charging at the airport. And there was no outdoor charging. I had to pay for the expensive, covered parking. It's like $25 a day. And I'm like, oh my God, but I didn't have a choice because I had nowhere. But anyway, the charging there is just normal level 1 plug. So it's essentially a wall outlet like you can have anywhere. So those are really cheap to install, a million of them.
Sure.
And it just charges your car very slowly over. For my vehicle, it has 100-mile charge, so it takes it about a day, 18 hours to charge fully.
Okay.
So, but I mean, my car's parked there for a couple days, so what's the matter? It can take 3 days to charge it. So those are pretty cheap.
3 days and 9 years.
One here?
Yeah, a general question. What's going to happen with all the batteries after these things? So what's the lifetime of one of these car batteries, and how long, and what happens then? Is there some sort of a life cycle concept here, or a recycling concept?
Yeah, a lot of research is being done on that as well. What I've seen with a Tesla, and they've done simulations where they drive like a million miles on one battery, and the efficiency only went down, I think, 85 or 90%, which is really amazing. It's 5 times what the average vehicle gets. I think one really cool use case is for stationary storage, particularly at fast charging stations. So we're experiencing maybe high demand charges to put a battery in front of the meter or behind the meter. Yeah. And California is doing this with old BMW i3 batteries. They're kind of stacking them up after the cars are done. So,
but is there any policy initiative along this line?
Not yet.
The UK is stacking them up at the base of windows.
Yeah, that works. Cool.
Yeah, second life is for battery storage. Because for an electric car, you need really high capacity, and once it loses a little capacity, it's still a really good battery. but the use is for storage, and that's really taken off.
I want to know if there's any policy along that
Yeah.
line, because otherwise it's not going to happen.
So number 6, education and awareness, and this is what's going on this week with National Drive Electric Week. That's the photo from Denver today at City Hall. So they had like about a dozen vehicles, one Fisker, really good-looking sports car. I think there's only a few of those. So outreach events like this, and also partnering with auto dealers. There's one program in Connecticut where, as part of their incentive program, they actually give the dealer a bonus if he sells an EV. So it's about $300 if you sell an EV versus a gas-powered car. And we found that this really incentivizes dealers to at least learn about the technology. It is very different. It's very non-traditional if you're used to selling cars. In fact, when Tesla went to hire people to man their showrooms, they didn't go to Ford or Nissan. They went to Apple Store, because those people know how to sell consumer electronics, which is really what Tesla is. So bringing dealerships, bringing car salesmen up to speed on EVs and the technology. And then lastly, I just want to go through electric utilities and their role. Utilities have a ton to gain from EVs. They're kind of losing market share with things like energy efficiency, with things like rooftop solar, right? This distributed generation. EVs are kind of their saving grace, I think, where they can add all this additional load to the grid, and they're kind of wisening up to this right now, and starting to invest significant dollars in EV charging stations, and even in some states, incentive programs. California has really been a leader here, but also not your usual suspects, like Ohio's gotten involved, Maryland, Nevada. Colorado is behind because we're an oil and gas state, and we have some legislation on the way. We're working on that next year, and hopefully Xcel Energy will announce a program to invest in EV charging infrastructure themselves. What else haven't I covered? So utility EV rate design, we sort of talked about earlier, sort of load shifting with time of use rates, waiving demand charges for DC fast charging stations. And that's it. Okay. So there's one more thing. So this is a website that we built for Go EV City, and it has the whole policy toolkit. It has samples for each policy, who's done what in Colorado, outside Colorado. We're actually sort of shopping this around to city council members, to county officials, to advocates right now. And we have a good amount of interest in Boulder County and in Denver as well. If you want to get involved as an EV advocate, let me know and email me, either this email address or there's a contact form through the website. And that's all I have. Thank you. Sorry, we have more questions.
What do you know about the Boulder Hub Bus diesel to electric conversion, bus number 15, supposed to be ready for summer 2018? What do you know about that?
I don't have an update for you, but it is real. Yeah.
Right, so my understanding is it's a third of the cost of a new electric bus to upfit, to change that stinky, noisy Gillig bus to electric, the battery electric, and the lightning systems in Loveland is doing the conversion.
Right. That's exactly right. So City of Boulder is working on it, via mobility and lightning systems. And I'd assume maybe they're going after some Volkswagen money as part of the settlement deal, which starts in October. So maybe in the next 6 months or so. We have one more question here.
Yeah, first of all, Matt, that was a terrific presentation. It was like way more comprehensive than we could hope for. But there was one thing that I didn't see there, and I know that's because it's EV week and we're supposed to be focused on EV, which is the importance of pooling. Like you said, an EV gets about 50 miles a gallon, but every person you put in that car, that has the equivalent effect of raising that by another 50 miles a gallon, right? So if you have 4 people in a car, it's kind of like a 200 mile a gallon car rather than a 50 mile a gallon car. And then I think that also gets to the micro-mobility point that you made, which is these little e-scooters are insanely efficient. You're not moving around a huge hunk of metal. If you can find a way to incentivize their deployment massively in cities, you could save a lot of pollution and you could save an enormous amount of energy. So I just think that those are really important points. But I realize we're focusing on electric vehicles.
Yes. No, the occupancy question is a big one we work on too. Maybe it's for another presentation, but yeah.
I wanted to mention something about cost. There are some calculators out there, but they are only always addressing new cars. And that means that if you do those calculations, it still looks like an EV is going to cost too much for my budget. And there's no way to enter used prices. And I think if you are redesigning these calculators, this ought to be in there because, I mean, if you can get a used EV for $8,000 or $10,000, it blows everything away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And I think we're maybe overly focused on new sales. That's kind of our metric, adding a few here and there, especially with the tax credits assigned to new vehicles. And even leases.
Lots of used EVs will come on the market as wealthier people move up to better, newer models every day.
Yeah, there's actually a business, I think, in East Boulder that sells and leases.
Green Eye Motors.
Green Eye Motors, yeah.
I used Ford Focus from them, and they brought it into California, and I got the state rebate because it had never been registered in Colorado.
Whoa.
So I didn't get a federal rebate.
Whoa.
So I bought a used car and still got the rebate.
There's an idea.
That's gone.
Okay.
Only new ones.
Thanks for bringing that up. It's important, yeah. One here?
Is there any policy initiatives going on right now for commercial vehicles, like semi-trucks? I know they're a huge part of the...
Yeah, I mean, we really don't have an electric option yet. I know Tesla's developing that semi-truck. So really all we can do with the Volkswagen money is get cleaner versions, so better mileage on new diesel and gasoline vehicles. But I'd say that's coming down the pipeline for sure, yeah. One in the back?
And speaking of semi-truck, I was wondering if you have anything to say about the electrification of the trucking industry with, Thor and Tesla and current large players in the industry going in that direction.
Yeah, I think it's still kind of on the horizon. I haven't really seen any. I know that Tesla has years worth of orders for the semi-truck, but I haven't really seen any in action. I don't know what their range is. I don't know where the charging system is going to be, but it's certainly a good use case, right? These, again, high mileage vehicles is a great economic case for electrification.
Matt, there is one thing happening with trucking, which is there are kind of two use cases for trucks. One is long-haul highway trucking, and the other is local trucking, and there's a lot of trucking that is centered around ports. And so they have what's called drayage vehicles, where they'll bring in the trailer, they'll unhook it from the dirty diesel truck, and then when it's in the port, they can use an electric truck. And there's some efforts to incentivize that in California ports especially.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sounds good for Long Beach. Yeah. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Cool, yeah, thanks. Cool.